What's up, everybody? Welcome into a brand new episode of the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host today, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. You can follow the podcast at Pack a Day Podcast. We finished up another Packers family night, and for the most part, it was a nondescript practice, and that's obviously going to be the crux of my topic today, is kind of going over some of the takeaways from family night. Of course, the first thing, the fans in the stands and being able to see the fans back at Lambeau Field. I know we got a little taste of it towards the end of last season, but it wasn't the same. And I know this wasn't exactly a packed Lambeau Field. The weather had a lot to do with that, but still seeing 30,000 plus Packer fans in Lambeau Field is always fantastic, especially for a practice, especially in bad weather. So that's always going to be a takeaway, is just how many avid Packer fans there are at a glorified Packers practice, which is just still so incredibly crazy to think about. Again, especially in inclement weather, which was somewhat of a story as well. Practice gets postponed to start because of the weather. They end things a little bit early. They don't get to some of the periods they want. You could see some of the sloppiness on the field as well. There were a couple fumbled exchanges. Specifically, I think when Jordan Love was in there, I don't think it was anything that Jordan Love did wrong, but you could just see some of the sloppiness because of the wet football, the wet grass, the rain, everything like that. So a little bit of a sloppy practice, and again, not being able to get to everything they wanted to is, I'm sure, a little bit of a bummer for the coaching staff. But overall, I thought it was a solid practice. And again, I think there were still some solid takeaways from it. Before I kind of get to some of those takeaways, there were a handful of players that were not practicing or participating in this practice. Obviously, anyone that's on PUP or the non-football injury list was still not practicing. But besides those players, Chris Blair, Equanimeous St. Brown, Kamal Martin, Randy Ramsey, Josiah DeGuara, Juwan Winfrey, and Kenny Clark were the players that weren't practicing. So Equanimeous St. Brown, Juwan Winfrey, and Kenny Clark were potentially new players missing from practice. So we'll see if they're able to get back on Monday when practice opens back up, or if they're still out. All of those are going to be worth monitoring. Obviously, Kenny Clark, you don't want any major issues with. And then with Juwan Winfrey and Equanimeous St. Brown, those guys, need every snap that they can get in a very crowded wide receiver room. So that's going to be worth monitoring as well. So hopefully no major injuries going into practice, but those were the players that did not practice on Saturday night. Practice kicked off with one of the fan favorite net drills with Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love, Kirk Benkert trying to hit the stationary net in the back of the end zone from a variety of distances. Kirk Benkert had the first long one. He had around a 45, 50 yarder. And then Aaron Rodgers responded to that with hitting two from distance. He had already hit a few shorter passes. So I believe Rodgers hit 5 in the net total, which is just absolutely crazy, and just goes to show you the accuracy that he still has, and just how he, owns those sort of drills. And it's, I know that we've seen this from Aaron Rodgers over the years, but it's still nothing short of extraordinary to see the pinpoint accuracy that he has. And yes, the nets are stationary, and yes, they're fairly big, but it's still, you watch it and you still are just in awe of the quarterbacks and their accuracy with this. And even the ones, there were a couple that hit the framework of the net and things like that. But getting anywhere close to it's impressive, but sinking it in the back of the net is crazy. And again, Rodgers did it 5 times. And again, Benkert had one from about 50 yards out as well. So that's always fun to watch. It's interesting. The play of the day I'm going to get to probably a little bit later. It's probably the Savage maybe interception or something like that. But today, the biggest topic that we would be talking about right now, if Reggie Begelton held on to the pass, was the throw from Jordan Love to Reggie Begelton in the back of in the front of the end zone, I guess I should say. But on the play action fake, and Begelton's running a deep post, 2 defenders on him. I think Innis Gaines was one. I forget who the other person was, but 2 defenders on him. And Jordan Love unleashed a pinpoint accurate 50-plus yard pass off of play action, literally in the only spot that Reggie Begelton could get it, just outside of the outstretched arms of the 2 defenders. Unfortunately, Reggie couldn't come down with it. Again, 2 defenders there on the run, not the easiest catch in the world, but hit him right in the hands. If he comes down with that, the Packer sports world is buzzing with the play that Jordan Love made. Now, in practice, this isn't a game, right? So in practice, you're focusing on what each player did individually. You're not necessarily looking at the outcome. And on that specific play, yes, it was unfortunate that Beggleton dropped it, and that'll go unfortunately as a miss for Beggleton and something that'll be on his report card moving forward. But for Jordan Love, that is the type of flash play that showed up in college. That's the type of flash play that has showed up with a little bit more consistency in year 2 that we didn't necessarily see in year 1 during training camp. And those are the type of things that give you hope for a future with Jordan Love as quarterback. And it was a gorgeous ball and pinpoint accuracy off of play action. And you just love to see those things. So I thought Jordan Love had a fairly nice day. He did miss on one pass, but I thought he hit some receivers in stride. I saw him go through progressions a little bit more. So I thought today was a big step in the right direction for Jordan Love. And again, we would all be buzzing right now about that Jordan Love throw, even more so if it was caught by Beggleton. But when evaluating Jordan Love, it literally doesn't matter if Beggleton caught it or not. And that's what these sessions and periods are for, to evaluate these players individually. And Jordan Love gets a huge A+ for that throw. And again, I thought his overall day was much more solid and one of the better days that he's put together in camp so far. So the next up is I want to discuss some defensive backs here. Jair Alexander had another really nice day, a couple pass breakups, and it just looking absolutely like Jair Alexander. And again, I've said this on so many different occasions, just if you get some time in the rest of training camp, just watch what Jair Alexander does on a play-by-play basis, because his just pure athleticism and ability to play corner in the NFL is so special. And you just see him come up with these plays day after day after day in practice. And this was another great opportunity. I know this one was on TV, at least locally in some areas of Wisconsin. So just, gives another platform for it. But man, Jair Alexander standing out again. And then Ento had a couple really nice pass breakups as well. And again, he's put together a pretty nice training camp so far. And I go back to the fact that, Ento, made it on the roster, not the 53, but on the overall roster his rookie season, was going to be on the 53 last year, was going to be a core special teams player, is looking to make it as a core special teams player again this year. But he's showing that, I don't think anyone's mistaking the fact that, I don't think you can just put Ento in as your starting corner and you'd be like, oh, we're good to go. But as your number 6 corner, a Ento type player is an ideal type of player in that situation or scenario. He can go out and play special teams, on kick coverage, on punt coverage, can do a variety of different things, can probably even be a jammer on punt returns. So he can be on multiple special teams unit, field goal blocks, etc. But he's showing enough that in a pinch, if you need him out on, in the defensive backfield, you might be able to get by with him at least a little bit. And that has a lot of value as your 6th defensive back, as well as being a player who still has some upside, with this just being his 3rd year ever playing defensive back. Remember, he played wide receiver in college. So another nice night from Ento. It was interesting afterwards. Matt LaFleur was asked about Ento, and he really downplayed it and just basically kind of made it seem like Kabian's got a long, a ways to go, and he's just got to come out and compete and put together things consistently day in and day out. And it's one of two things. Either he was being totally blunt and it wasn't a real rousing, evaluation of Ento, and just going out to show that Kabian has more to prove if he wants to make this roster, or this is a classic coach who knows that this is a player that's probably on the fringe of making the team or not. And if he doesn't make it, you want to get him back on your practice squad. And he probably knows that if he goes out of his way to say how great Ento looks, that may catch the eyes of some scouts around the league, and they may keep a little bit of a closer eye on him. So as a coach, sometimes in those situations, it's to your benefit to have a fringe player and just maybe not give out too much information. This seemed like a classic coach of like, I'm not going to give you too much information on Ento, but maybe he was being 100% truthful, and it just should be a message to Kabian that he still has work to do. And I think either way, right? I don't think I'm as you can tell. I think Kabian has the opportunity to make a 53-man roster, but in no way, shape, or form does Kabian, I don't think, have anything locked up at this point. So he still has work to do, whether that was sincere or maybe a little bit of coach speak at the podium from Matt LaFleur. Certainly still work to do, but a really nice night from Kabian as well. And then Chandon Sullivan, another corner who I thought had nice coverage. There's about 3 different plays. He didn't make any pass breakups, at least that I saw, but about 3 different plays where he was in coverage on the play. One play where they threw to Cobb and it fell incomplete. Another where they threw to Devontae and it fell incomplete. They might have had another one that fell incomplete as well. But when targeting Chandon, there just wasn't anything going on. So I think Sullivan looks so far in training camp much more like 2019 Chandon Sullivan than 2020 Chandon Sullivan. And that's a pretty significant difference. In 2019, when Chandon played, he looked like a legitimate slot defender who could help this team in a variety of different ways. 2020, we saw some flashes of that here and there, but with some real inconsistency and struggles in between. If he bounces back to how he looked in 2019, that could be a very big step for this defensive backfield. So nice night for Chandon Sullivan as well. At running back, I thought, a couple guys. So we got to see a couple, runs from Patrick Taylor, and I mentioned this the other day. I am so excited to see what happens when the pads come on in preseason, right? And there's actually live tackling. We talk about A.J. Dillon. Listen, A.J. Dillon's just built differently, right? But Patrick Taylor is a big running back with a little bit of burst and explosion to his game. He's got good hands. I'm really intrigued. And I think this could be a running back who, I still think he's going to fight to have to make this roster. They're probably going to have to keep 4 running backs because Kylan Hill, who I'm just going to talk about in a minute, I think is really just too darn good to not keep as your number 3. But Patrick Taylor has me really intrigued, and I want to really see him and dive into him deeper when he finally gets some NFL carries, because he's a really unique build of running back. Having A.J. Dillon on the roster probably counterfeits Patrick Taylor a little bit in the fact that you've already got this big bruising running back and one that is probably going to do it to a much higher extent than you are. So you're not getting any diversity by keeping Patrick Taylor on the roster. Basically, you're not getting a kick returner. You're not getting a guy that's going to do a ton on special teams. You're not getting a great pass pass catcher out of the backfield. And as you start putting some of those things together, when I say not a great, he's got good hands. He can run a couple routes. He's just not you're not going to put him in as your third down back, right? I should put it that way. When you look at it, he's mostly just a running back, right? And in today's day and age, the more you can do as a third down back, pass protector, running back, kick returner, maybe being used on special teams in a variety of ways, the better. And when you already have a guy like that, an A.J. Dillon, who's not going to probably play a ton of special teams and do a lot of that stuff, that makes it really difficult to keep Patrick Taylor as well. So he's definitely behind the 8 ball, but I'm really intrigued by his build and his running style, and I want to see what he's going to do in preseason. Had a couple nice runs in family night. Kylan Hill, same exact thing. There was a couple runs where he's looks like a little jitterbug out there, made a great jump cut in the backfield and gained some extra yardage off of it. Like I said a couple moments ago, Kylan Hill he's just too good to not keep. And there's going to be teams. Go back and listen. If you haven't had a chance yet, go back and listen to my scouting report on Kylan Hill. Right after the draft got done, I did every draft pick for the Packers and did a scouting report on him from an extensive tape study on each of those guys. Kylan Hill, I was irrationally excited about, easy for me to say, but I was so excited about what he put on tape in college. And to me, when I watched him, that was closer to a 3rd or 4th, probably 4th round draft pick, maybe 5th. Round draft pick than anything near the 7th. I thought Green Bay got an absolute steal, and I think he's starting to show that practice in and practice out, and he just seems to be getting better, and I thought he had a really nice family night as well. And then Aaron Jones, I think he only had, 1 or 2 touches, but you can just see how smooth of a runner Aaron Jones is. He got the one little check down in the open field, made somebody miss, got upfield. He just looks exactly like Aaron Jones, and there's no bigger compliment for a player at running back right now in Green Bay than that. He's just been so good for the last few seasons. So nice to see him back in Packer green and gold after an offseason where you weren't sure if that was going to happen. We can always debate whether or not they paid too much to a running back and things like that, but there's no question that this team is better when Aaron Jones is out there, and I really like this running back group, from Jones to Dillon to Kylan Hill to Patrick Taylor. Even Dexter Williams has had a really nice camp. So they're going to have to make some tough decisions, but really, really like this running back group. Another player who had another nice night and is having a very strong training camp is Robert Tonyan. And again, I think I've talked about him in the last two podcasts here, at least two of the last three. And he's just catching everything his way. And the level of confidence that he's playing with right now, remember, this is a player who is close with George Kittle. And, those guys have practiced together in the offseason, the last few off seasons. And I'm just hoping Tonyan didn't teach, Kittle everything he knows. But in all seriousness, I think some of that swagger and intensity from Kittle is kind of moved on to, to Tonyan a little bit. And again, when you have a season like Tonyan had a season ago, after a couple of years where you're just trying anything you can to make it, it just gives you so much confidence. And you can just see that in Tonyan right now. He's catching everything that comes his way. And Aaron Rodgers is not hesitant to continually look at Tonyan in the middle of the field, which is, again, with Rodgers, who's still, even last year, tended to avoid the middle of the field a little bit. If Tonyan can be a real difference maker, go back to Jermichael Finley. And Tonyan and Jermichael are not the same player, so I'm not saying that. But go back to Jermichael Finley and how Aaron was able to attack the middle of the field back with Finley in those days. If Tonyan can give some of that, man, it just opens up this offense so much more. And this was already obviously the number one offense a season ago, but Tonyan looks better, and that is a dangerous thought for opposing defenses. As I mentioned before, the play of the day may have been the interception by Darnell Savage. Another drop by Davante Adams, who's had some issues with drops this training camp. Am I concerned about it? Absolutely not one iota, but definitely rare for Adams to have this many drops. Remember, it's a very slick football. But, hits Davante Adams right in the hands. He bobbles it a little bit. And then Darnell Savage makes a really nice interception where, kind of bounces a couple times. He keeps concentration on it, and then picks off the ball. So nice play by him, odd play by Adams. You just don't see it that often, but you can see the confidence starting to come with Darnell Savage as well. And again, it's a play that probably should have been 8-yard slant to Adams, and we're not talking about probably Savage at all. But one of the things that this defense needs to do a better job of is just being opportunistic. And that's a perfect example of a defense that's opportunistic of a ball that bounces their way. I just feel like this defense hasn't always taken advantage of those type of situations. Darnell Savage is a player who can take advantage of those situations, and he was opportunistic on that play. And in that situation, it paid off for the defense. A couple other quick news and notes type things here. I talked about the Davante Adams drop. Well, he may have had the moment of the day. There's a video that went slightly viral after the game. Adams jumped literally over a police officer after the game. So they're all the Packers are kind of getting together around the fans and going up to see the fans and things like that. And you see this group of players getting together. And then all of a sudden you see Adams sprint in and literally jump over true Vince Carter in the Olympics dunking over a 7-foot dude type jump, just jumps straight over the police officer's head, and it was literally right on top of him. It's not like he jumped to the side of him, anything like that. He jumped literally right over, and just shows the freak athleticism of a player like Davante Adams. He cleared him easily. He's probably 5'10", 6 feet tall, and he just pure cleared him. No concerns whatsoever. So that's just Davante being a completely freak athlete. Another player who stuck out a couple different times was Josh Avery, newly signed defensive tackle. Had a couple plays where he got into the backfield. So definitely a player that I'm going to have to keep a little extra eye on. I mean, these are always tough situations where you come in at this point in training camp and then try to make a name for yourself. But, you've got 3 preseason games and a family night and those sort of things. And the more you can do in those situations and circumstances, the better. Josh Avery made a couple plays at family night. That goes a long way in sticking out, and now he just got to, again, Mike McCarthy stack success, one practice after the other. But I thought that was a pretty nice showing from Josh Avery. And then also in the middle of the field, TJ Slayton had another stop right at the line of scrimmage. I believe it was in the live tackling period where he's right in the thick of things. He actually got to start, the quote-unquote start, at nose tackle with Kenny Clark being out. So remember, Clark's out, Kingsley Kiki's out, out as well. But it was Lowry and then Slayton and then Lancaster. So there's nobody else really on the roster that probably would have gotten that nod. But still good for Slayton to get some of those reps with the first team. And for the most part, when I was able to see him, it looked like he was kind of making the most out of it. And then lastly, from a family night standpoint, the MVP of the game, no injuries. So Matt LaFleur mentioned in his press conference after practice that it sounds like they got away with no injuries from practice. So that is always a huge outcome of any practice, game, scrimmage, whatever. But especially with a slick field and then players having to postpone a little bit from coming out of the locker room to go on the field, and then just trying to sub so many different people in and out. You never know what's going to happen in those those situations. They did some live tackling, so all those things going on, and to get out of there with no injuries, another big win for the Packers coming out of family night. That's what I'm going to label my MVP for this one, and again, which was mostly a nondescript practice. And then last but not least, I want to wrap things up today just quickly talking about Charles Woodson, who went into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And Woodson is bar none on my Mount Rushmore of favorite Packers, and he might be one. He was so fun to watch. And I go back to that Dom Capers defense, and I know I've talked about this maybe a couple times before, but what Charles Woodson was able to do for that Dom Capers defense was nothing short of extraordinary during those, the Super Bowl run and the years surrounding that, right? This is a defense that if you looked at it, they played so much nickel, right? They played two defensive tackles, and then it was like Zombo and Clay Matthews at outside linebacker. They had multiple inside linebackers that were circling in. A lot of Raji and Cullen Jenkins as those defensive tackles. And then, Charles Woodson in the slot, and then you got the rest of your defensive backs, Sam Shields, Tramon Williams, Charlie Peppera, Nick Collins. A lot of really talented players on that team, right? Cullen Jenkins, BJ Raji, Clay Matthews, Tramon Williams, Sam Shields, Nick Collins, all those guys, tremendously talented Green Bay Packers. But to me, the guy that made that all work was Charles Woodson. And, teams were still pass heavy at that point, but Green Bay was so ahead of its time playing so much nickel. But the reason they were able to do that is because Charles Woodson was basically an outside linebacker as well when he was playing in that spot. And if you think of it this way, right? So Green Bay just keeps that same nickel defense. Two defensive linemen, four linebackers, including two edge rushers in Clay and Zombo. And then, Charles Woodson in the slot, two corners outside, two safeties, right? They just keep that defense on the field almost no matter what they're changing in. If the opposing offense comes with a little bit more of a run formation or a power formation, what it amounts to is Zombo then kind of almost moves as like a defensive lineman. So you've got Zombo and you've got Raji and you've got Cullen Jenkins basically as three defensive linemen. Clay Matthews and Charles Woodson are now your outside linebackers. And then you've got, whether it was Desmond Bishop, Nick Barnett, AJ Hawk, Brandon Chiller, who's ever in there at the time where you're inside linebackers. You've now moved into a 3-4 with Charles Woodson literally acting as basically an outside linebacker. And oh, by the way, he can rush off the edge in that situation, almost like an edge rusher, a ton of sacks during that time, especially for a DB. He can set the edge as a run defender. He can literally do all of that. Now the team says, okay, that doesn't work. We're gonna pass on this team. Well, now you've got a freaking Hall of Famer as a corner, chilling in the center with Sam Shields and Tramon Williams on the outside. You can drop back your linebackers. You've got Clay Matthews coming off the edge. You can still blitz Charles Woodson off the edge. You can drop Clay into coverage. Like, it opened up so many avenues for Dom Capers in that defense to confuse and to make things difficult. But what Charles Woodson was able to do, and he could screen back basically as a pseudo safety. He could cover man-to-man. He could cover in zone. He could blitz. He could set the edge. He could, all of it. It is just absolutely crazy. And to have a player like that, who's just an absolute, chess piece. And that term gets overused at times. Charles Woodson at that spot was a literal legitimate chess piece. And when we talk about this Joe Barry star formation or what you want a nickel cornerback to look like, that's it. And that's why the Rams had so much success in a lot of ways with using Jalen Ramsey in a similar type of slot situation in a lot of plays a season ago, in a Joe Barry style defense, Brandon Staley, etc. To me, Ramsey is the closest player we've had to Charles Woodson since Charles Woodson, because he has that size, that strength, that bulk, the physicality. He's still good and great, I should say, in man-to-man, like just so talented. And, again, you're seeing what, Brandon Staley and Jalen Ramsey did a season ago, was copying a ton from what you saw from Charles Woodson and Dom Capers during that Super Bowl run in Green Bay. So kudos on an absolutely worthy Hall of Fame career for Charles Woodson, one of the absolute all-time greats. Wish he could have played a few more seasons in Green Bay. That's a story for another day. Aaron Rodgers has certainly done some talking about that this offseason already, so I think he's probably said it better than I could. But congratulations to Charles Woodson, one of my all-time favorite Packers, and congratulations on becoming officially a Hall of Fame member, which is just unbelievable and super amazing and so deserved for him. That is going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for checking out this episode. I greatly appreciate it. I'll be right back here tomorrow with a brand new episode, so make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.